Hi there, Julia here. We're going to work today on looking at the hip joint and using Hanna Somatics to discover how we might get more control over the muscles and the muscle fibers that work to move the hip joint. So, sensory motor amnesia is a term Hanna used to describe when the brain, the nervous system, doesn't really connect into the muscles as well as it might. And this can happen because we might have had injuries, or we might have held ourselves in a certain way for a long time, and the brain just stops talking to those muscle fibers. And it needs a process of real concentration and focus in simple movement in order to wake those muscle fibers back up again. And that's the process we're going through today. It can be a really useful practice to do if you have tension or pain or discomfort in your hips, because that can often be because you're not utilizing all of the muscle fibers that help to move the hip around, and the muscle fibers that you are using are under more strain, or they're just loading in a way that's uncomfortable for the hip. So sounds a lot more complicated than it is. Let's just lie down and have a little look at what we can do. So coming to lying down on your back and having your head, your shoulder blades and your back of your pelvis all in a straight line, and just let your hand rest lightly on your hip here. Just smooth your hands up and down the side of your thigh and your hip joint, just soothing and relaxing these muscles here to the very side of the thigh. This is your IT band, and at the top your TFL muscle, and they can be really overworked here when we get hip pain. So just soothing, relaxing these muscles. So if it's uncomfortable to sit with your legs like this, you can actually put a pillow or folded up blanket in between your thighs. If it's not uncomfortable, then leave your thighs resting one on top of the other. Flex the ankle joint, and then we're slowly sliding the top thigh forwards just a little way and backwards just a little way. Now you might go far less far than me. Let your sensations in your body be your guide. And that's another reason to go really slowly. If we go fast, we can just use those familiar muscle fibers, and then we get into a familiar pattern of pain. But if you go slow, you can start to access different muscle fibers because your brain has time to kind of catch up and connect with them. So stay within your own comfortable range of motion, just very slowly seeing how far you can slide forwards comfortably. Comfort is your guide. It might only be 0.5 millimeter, and that's okay. And how much can you slide backwards comfortably? So you don't want any tweaks, aches, pains, strains. Don't want any of that coming in. Sliding forwards and sliding back, and just kind of contemplate for yourself what muscles are working here to create this movement. And can you really relax the thighs and the legs and the knee and the lower leg? They're just very, very passive. Sliding forwards and sliding back. If you've ever had sciatica, this is a helpful movement for people with sciatica in the lower leg, so it works with the sciatic nerve in the lower leg. Just kind of passively flossing all the muscles and the fascia that lie around the sciatic nerve. Okay, and then come back to this point here, and we're going to do a different movement. So we've done that forwards and backwards movement. Now we're doing a hitching movement for the hip. So the muscle that does this is called the QL muscle. One of the muscles, but the main muscle that does this. So it sits above the hip crest, and it's a back muscle. So it sort of lies on top of the psoas muscle, which is a bit deeper. So when you lift, let's lift both legs. So flex the ankle joints and lift both lower legs up. Hopefully you feel a kind of a bunching up and a hardening of this muscle underneath your hand, just above your hip crest. Slowly lower down and really feel that lengthening in the side waist, and then hitching up and feel that shortening in the side waist to hitch your hip up, and then slowly lowering down. You can see a wobble there in me. Really lengthen. So this double leg movement is just to kind of wake up this muscle and get you connected with this QL muscle, feeling the shortening and the hitching and feeling the lengthening. And this is when we're kind of decompressing that muscle, really allowing it to lengthen and release. Sometimes it can get bunched up and tight and stay tight. And here we're encouraging a release. Often a hip that's painful is often hitched up higher than a hip that's not in pain. So that can be this bunching up of this muscle, this tightening or holding in this muscle that we're seeing if we can unwind and release as we lower down. You can see that little wiggle there. And what I'm doing is going very slowly through these movements to see if I can smooth the movement out. So do just one leg now, lifting up and feeling that hitching in your hip. You don't want to feel any gripping in your thigh or around your side of your hip. If you're doing that, then you've gone too far. So don't lift up as high. You can see that little wobble there. You want to lift up using this hip muscle, not the side of the thigh. So relax and release here and use this lifting up, even if it means you don't lift so high. And then slowly, smoothly as you can, lengthen down. So when I'm not talking, or when I'm talking less, I can focus on that movement more. But you really need to put your mind to that lift. You can see a little wobble there. As high as you can go, but without tightening here in your hip and in your side of your thigh. So it might not be as high as me. And then slowly, slowly release and lengthen down. Good. So we're going to put those two movements together into a circular movement, and it might be helpful to bring your hand onto your hip and then hitch your hip up. You can do it with or without the leg. It's good if you can try to get that muscle switched on without lifting the leg, and then slide your knee forwards, drop the hip, so lengthen in the side of the waist and slide the knee back, and then hitch the hip up and then slide the knee forward. So you're creating a kind of a circle with your hip, circling it up, back and up and forwards and down. And just feeling what movements are trickier for you. Is it the hitching up that's tricky? Is it the sliding forwards that's tricky? Is it the unhitching, the unwinding and lengthening that's tricky? Or is it the going back? And just find what part of the movement is tricky for you and go slowly through it. And you might be making a much smaller circle than me. I'm just making this type of a circle for you to sort of see what I'm doing. But your circle could be tiny. Okay, now try circling the other way, unhitching the hip, sliding forwards, lifting up, sliding back, unhitching. So you're kind of circling backwards. Just noticing what muscles are helping you to do this and feeling into them and checking out their contraction stages and their release stages, and that they're doing both. Good. And then resting there, soothing your hands down the thigh, back up again. and down the thigh and back up again. Good. And then resting, just lying on your back, allowing everything to be, feeling that everything comes into a kind of an alignment with the floor. Feel how that hip feels. It might feel a bit more zingy and alive. If it feels kind of a little bit achy, that's okay. But if it feels quite a lot achy, then it just means you've gone a little bit too far, and do less next time. So when you're ready to, you can rewind this video and have a little look at your other hip on the other side. Thank you.